All right, welcome to the feedback loop, my opportunity to go through some of the comments that have been left on our videos on the KissFAQ channel during the past week. It's always fun to have a dialogue, see what people are thinking, and also potentially answer questions or address comments. So let's jump straight in with some of the older topics of the week. First up is one of the shorts that I published last week, which was, of course, Gene and Paul revisiting Wicked Lester. I did Wicket. Oh, wow, I've got a typo on that. Okay, so that was from the Las Vegas Vault. I can't remember the details on that one other than I did bump into Bob Kulick that weekend in Vegas, I think. Again, it's a long time ago, so Gene and Paul were just goofing around on stage. I would actually love, at an event with a little bit more perhaps planning and structure, for those two just to sit up on stools and do exactly what Gene attempted to do during the vault sessions. In this one, they were talking about some pretty obscure songs going back to the pre-Lester, the Rainbow, even. So very, very early stuff. They were playing a little bit of Suitor. They played a little bit of another song. Paul's talking about it. Gene's trying to remember. Just make sure Gene's guitar's all set up and he can hear the wedge. It would be really fun for them to revisit that. So happy Marsharino. Why are they not playing instead of constantly interrupting and talking? Because it's not a performance as much as a storytellers. So they're stopping. It's unplanned. Who knows where it's going? So that's why you're not going to get a performance quality out of it, sadly, which is why what I've just said goes. Other old comment, George Taylor on the quadrophobia episode. I always thought Radioactive was a rock and roll over sounding song. It was. Again, that song had been kicking around in various forms back to its Penny Arcade days for a fair bit. Felix Luash gets me on 593, or maybe I talked about that one previous. I can't remember at this point. Doesn't matter. Ken did a Michael Corleone on Julian. Okay. All right. So jumping into the proper videos from the week. Obviously, episode 640 was our investigation, our refocusing on You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best. So let's go through some of those. Bjorn, again, I wish they'd do an upgraded version of the Animalize Live on Blu-ray. There was a Brazilian one that came out a few years ago that wasn't great, wasn't terrible. It would be nice if it did get an official release, but again, that was, I can't remember who that was released via in the 80s, but who knows, there may be some hang up with that. Was that even on, what's it called? Kissology. Can't remember at this point, but an upscaled one, perhaps, who knows? Could be fun. Let's see some other responses on the topic of the video, though. I haven't listened to the album since it was new. The re-recorded vocals bothered me so much that I never bothered to listen to it again. I like the cover, though. Charles Bronson. So me and Ken went to the same reunion show. Yeah, you both went to San Jose in 1996. That was Bronson's first Kiss concert, certainly not Ken's first concert. Atomic 1413. Don't say no one wants to sit through a podcast for an hour in one go. We have a podcast like Let Me Know where they enjoy each other's company and sit for mostly over 3 hours. There's a lot of podcasts in mafia, gym training, and war genre talking for 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, fine. I've done some podcasts that were 3 hours and I never want to do it again. To each their own. If you're able to. My bladder is no longer in the condition where I can sit for 3 hours. I also have just naturally tended towards gearing ours towards an hour. Again, that's just personal preference. We don't set out with the goal of I hit stop at 60 minutes. No, we go for what the topic demands, but I'm also not one who wants to jump around a whole lot because, again, a lot of preparation usually on my part goes into some of these episodes. So to each their own, as the case may be. Again, we've got a couple of pretty long episodes on the KissFAQ podcast, but again, there's no design or framework that we go into any of the episodes on. Patent diorama. I think I got that right. Speaking of magazines, I saw a Hit Parader at Barnes & Noble with Youngblood on the cover. Oh, what's his name? Nick? Interesting. Well, Youngblood is kind of being put up there on a pedestal at the moment. It has to be seen what he actually does, rather than being, an image. He'll have to have some substance behind the style when he goes forward, but he's certainly got the pipes and the attitude. Uh, Rich Charvel. I got caught up in the reunion hype and purchased it. Kiss scammed me out of my money on that one. Joseph Kiss Sr. Some things are better in theory than in execution, but this is how I feel about this release. Everything from the cover to the Leno interview to the vocal track re-records on the vault tracks, this didn't work for me at all. It's a shame. Again, I think that was something that we did talk about, and Robert Conti talked about on the Three Sides episode, that it was a very different project when it started than what it ended up as. Richard Goad. Greetings in Thailand, if you're still there. Enjoyable episode. Thank you. Apart from the interview, which really has no place on this album, I'm okay with it as an album. I understand your reasoning, but all of Alive and Alive 2 was doctored, so does it really matter that the new tracks were doctored too? I loved hearing the deep tracks at the time, and no problem today. It was also great to have a live album compilation rather than a standard studio songs compilation that we'd had already had many. That's a great point, actually, and very good points. As Workman says in the response to Richard's comment, yeah, Alive and Alive 2 were constructs. They were fixed. I've been working on an A/B comparison of all the Alive album tracks compared to the source material. We'll see if you wanted the best deconstructing history does well enough to justify seeing that one through. But it's absolutely true. I think the difference is that those albums were fixed for a reason at the time. So they were contemporaneous molestings rather than going back and putting in something that doesn't necessarily fit with some of the material as it was. So it wasn't called out that we've cleaned it up and modernized this, that it was just presented as these are vault tracks. So maybe it was more in the labeling of the material, and if there'd been more honesty up front about it. We're updating this because this is what we sound like now, but these are tracks that we had left over from those other projects. The originals will come out at a later time. For those who want that, then maybe it would have been different. Again, people kind of knew, I guess, that Alive and Alive 2 weren't alive, weren't live albums by 1996. So I guess we shouldn't have been surprised, is the point. But again, I think everything that Rich said is absolutely bang on and rational and reasonable. Is it behind the mayonnaise? Good reference. All right, so Workman's comment. This album was a huge letdown for me, and I was consumed with the reunion tour and this era of the band. The re-recorded vocal was obvious. I grew up listening to bootlegs, so I would have preferred the original vocal, even if it wasn't a great performance. I'm pretty sure that room service is enhanced beyond the vocal. It seems glaringly obvious. Also, the Jay Leno interview is a huge waste. I'm with Julian on that. Thank you. Yay. It does nothing for me and detracts. It's not interesting and lacks energy, and also why Jay Leno? He has nothing to do with rock. I haven't listened to this in years, and I had to look it up on Wikipedia to review the track list. We also all had Alive 2 and Alive in our collections, so that didn't interest me either. A very disappointing release. I only bought it because I had to have everything they released. So a couple of things on that. I think it wasn't necessarily just for us as the people who had everything. I think it was a release putting it out there to people who were coming back to Kiss or experiencing Kiss for the first time. So it was just a sampler of that live legacy. So I think it's important not to mix that up. The Jay Leno stuff, there was one comment, and I don't see it here, but you wanted the best was that person's first Kiss release. And the comment that they made was listening to the Jay Leno interview was their first opportunity to start getting a feel for the characters of the guys who were in Kiss, the original lineup. So that was an interesting perspective I'd never considered or even thought about. So again, everything is someone's entry point to fandom in this way, and that was a very interesting one. That was their first experience of the four original members, getting to hear them even in that stage managed sort of thing. So thank you for those comments on that episode. I kicked off into the Deconstructing History series, and that was something, again, I mentioned it on the show. I just been preparing material, multimedia for the show episode, and it grew and grew and grew, and to the point where I figured I'm not going to be able to play 90 minutes worth of multimedia during the episode. So why not do a 5-part series on those new songs and what I hear? And it kicked off with the first episode was New York Groove, just by happenstance, as it's the bonus track. So some of those comments for that episode were, I always love the groove of Eric's drums at the intro by, I can't read these usernames on YouTube. This is brutal. Loved Ace's isolated vocal, half-assed and fully awesome as usual. Yeah, great. Ace was Ace. Heavens on Fire from Cobra 1984 was also on Dio's Hearing Aid album. I'd completely forgotten about that. I loved Stars at the time. That was a really cool video. So thanks for that, Killer 8186. Rome Loves Dan, great feature and audible information we all love as KISS Army members. Thank you. Appreciate that. Charles Bronson, Eric's playing was like night and day when he replaced Peter. Yeah, and again, it was nice to illustrate that difference, and why I appreciated that being included on the vinyl and also the Japanese version. Stargazer, I don't hear much difference really, but that may be my hearing. I always have an idea that Kiss is good in building hype, but usually delivers pretty cheap stuff, or cheaply done at least. You mentioned the live version of Heavens on Fire. Well, that was one of the few times we got a non-album track, non-regular track as a B-side. Only recently we started getting real special stuff with the anniversary sets and deluxe editions. Sadly, then they also ask for hugely inflated prices, which are certainly out of my range. Yeah, that is a problem with the products, especially now that they've become exclusive to Kiss Online, but they are still available on streaming platforms for free to listen to, and even to purchase on iTunes for much less than the physical product. If it's the music that you care about, there is a way for you to hear it legitimately. I think even Spotify for those who have subscriptions. So for me, I like the books and the newspaper from the box sets, because that's where the information is. Cold Acre, it sounds like Ace's vocal mic is feeding back. Not much you can do about that. If it was Gina or Paul's, you'd minimize it in the mix easier. It's 100% Ace's vocal take from Sydney 1980. Yeah, absolutely. I never suggested otherwise. It beats me why they didn't get him to retake that vocal later for the Inner Spankdom's TV special. Sure as hell they did Paul's. Maybe Ace wasn't reliable enough or available to re-record back in 1980. Curious what your... Oh, I'm not going to go into the technical stuff. That'll bore people even more than usual. So yeah, interesting that they didn't get Ace to update his vocal in 1996, but again, who knows what was going on in the background at that time, and really the full story. One day the full story of these recordings is going to come out from someone who was actually there. I'm just putting things together as best I can with my ears and my set of words. Jay Zach's dad, a very interesting episode. Always thought the shows on the 1980 tour should have been a live 3. Not sure what people want from Eric Carr's hi-hat work. All right, so hi-hat work, that's a little bit of a joke. Going back to Eric Carr in the studio with Michael James Jackson in 1982 and 1983 for the Creatures album, Killers, and Lick It Up, Eric did a cartoon that said more hi-hat, more hi-hat. So apparently when he was cutting his studio tracks, he wasn't using enough hi-hat for Michael James Jackson's liking, or perhaps Paul and Gene's for that matter. So there were overdubs done on quite a few of those 1980s albums for percussion and hi-hats, and Alan Schwartzberg came in on some albums to add in those additional pieces. So again, there's nothing, again, wrong with Eric Carr's drumming whatsoever. ever. But that's just a little thing that jumps out, and it also didn't separate out as best with those tracks. Going back to that, he's the drummer in Kiss, and he does the best version of New York Groove compared to the Dynasty tour. Please do not do feedback tracks anymore. Yeah, I don't want to do any feedback tracks anymore. That was very painful. Moving on to episode 2, which dropped yesterday, Tuesday. That was Let Me Know from the You Wanted the Best album. Daniel Bowden. I remember getting this on vinyl in the summer of 1996 and being really excited, and then heard the vocals and went, huh? Yeah, you and many others. Stargazer Max, always liked this song from the moment I got the debut, perhaps even my favorite, with that studio ending, of course. Then hearing this live version is very cool. I don't mind the redone vocals. I'm just happy that we finally got a live version of it. Great attitude, absolutely agree. And that was also very cool. So, Jonathan, the word you were looking for is dyad and triad. Thanks, Jonathan. A little bit delayed. I was recording. Joe Pamplemousse, sorry. Those rare tracks, lol. New Paul vocal plus Eric Carr drumming. Well, that's a new one I've not heard, but who knows? I actually lined up the drum tracks, and they match with the originals, by the way. That doesn't mean that there wasn't something done, but in terms of beat. Now, I know Eric Singer is a bit of a watch when it comes to timekeeping, so if he re-recorded and he was able to perfectly match everything 100%, then that's some pretty awesome drumming. That roll at the end is not Peter Criss. It's too top-heavy, too robotic. Again, that's why comments in these threads are great, because people get to chime in with what they hear and how they're able to express it, so thank you. Marazin, Quirko, or something like that. Crappiest Kiss LP ever. Missed opportunity. Yeah, so I guess that's that. So let's go over to the FAQ for some of the comments. Yeah, I'm not reading essays. There's too much there, and this episode's gone long enough. All right, so that's the feedback loop for this week. 3 more episodes of Deconstructing History remain, whether it becomes a regular feature that I dig into. Again, I try new things all the time. If they work, and I continue, and if they don't work, then I don't continue, because, again, I'm getting my kicks one way or the other. I don't have to turn everything into a video. A lot of this is going into a future edition of the Recording Focus and some other things that need updating for reading material. So they all have a purpose one way or another. Anyway, thank you for watching the videos in the past week. Very much appreciated. Keep chiming in with the comments. Join us live, because we love those comments while we're doing the shows. And peace out. Oh, look, you're still here, watching or listening. We're not sponsored, monetized, or supervised. We're only in this for subs and likes and kicks. So why don't you mash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about today's episode.